Welcome to the Hobby Jogger Podcast, where elite athletes and ham and eggers lace up their stories. We explore the common ground that running creates, from the world-class runner to the hobbyist hitting the pavement, trail, or treadmill. Expect a blend of inspiration, laughter, and the shared joy that makes every step count. Join us on this journey where every run is a story worth sharing. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of The Hobby Jogger. I'm joined today by my co-host, Kim Roy. Kim, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here, and I'm also happy to be interviewing and talking to a fellow Akronite, so Northeastern Ohio.
Heck yeah. And we have a big week, Kim. Burning River Relay. We are the defending co-ed champions of that race.
Yes.
We have to defend the title Saturday.
Yes, we do. We put in so much work, drink so many beers, and we are ready.
We do drink a lot of beers. I'm very excited to have our guest, Jill Reyna. She comes to us from Akron. She is a former member of the University of Akron cross country and track coach. She is a coach. She has a VO2 certificate, which we're going to get into because I have no idea what that is. And she is also a mom. So, Jill, welcome to the Hobby Jogger. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you guys and talk a little bit about my experience with running and coaching and Akron and the running scene here.
Awesome. You were a member of the Akron cross country and track team, correct?
Yes. Yep. I was there 2011 to 2016 was my time at Akron. And I was actually a walk-on, which is a fun fact because, I don't know, a lot of people think, you have to get a scholarship to run for college. And I found running later in life at least as a high school athlete. I didn't start in middle school or anything. I started mid high school years and just kind of found a talent in it and a love for it. But I was a little bit late to the recruiting game and I wasn't sure how serious I was with it. But then I had picked going to Akron already and I was like, well, I'm just going to talk with the coach. And so, I decided to walk on and it panned out really well for me. Obviously it was very challenging at times and I was a whole new world and got my eyes open to talent that I had never experienced. But yeah, I definitely am the runner I am today because of those experiences and the teammates that pushed me. And so I am forever grateful that I decided to take that challenge and walk on the team.
Yeah, I worked at the University of Akron for a little bit, and I worked with a lot of student athletes, and I commend athletes while going to school. It is a big commitment. They have strict schedules, and helping students create schedules for school is also very limiting because your practices can be hours and trying to figure everything out. So, the schedule is just busy. So definitely commend you. I do have a question. What event did you do in track?
So indoors, I did the 3K. That was really my specialty. I also did the 5K as well. The 3K was my favorite. And then outdoors, really just the 5K. I never attempted the 3K steeple, which now looking back, I kind of wish I would have just for fun, like once to try it. But I think I was always nervous. And I think my coaches were too, just of like injury, because that race is a little bit just fretful with, the water jumps and everything. But yeah, so 3K, 5K.
That's 1.86 miles, Kim. For the
okay, the 3K. Okay.
Yeah, I had to do some. Well, actually,
right.
Just Googled it real quick, but
right.
My math's not that good.
The Canton race. Remember, there's a 5K and a 6K. I never understand that.
Yeah, so the 6K. The reason for that with that, so at least for the women's race, the reason they have that 6K in there is because for cross country, our championship distance in college is a 6K.
Really? I did not know that. And traditionally, even for women's and men's for cross country during the regular season, it's both 5K. There is no difference between that, correct?
In high school.
In high school. Okay.
In college, at the beginning of the season, typically most races start out with we'll run, a 5K for the first two races of the season. And then for the rest of the time, pretty much for the women, it goes up to that 6K distance. And for the men, they usually just bump up to the 8K. So that we can obviously start practicing it for championship. college cross country is a very short season. We only have 6 races, whereas like high school, you have like 10.
So what, can you just say that real quick again, the schedule for cross country in college?
Yep. So in college, it is every other weekend that we would race. So it turned out to be 6 races. Plus then if your team is good enough to go to nationals, then you'd have a 7th race, but we never went to nationals. So 6 races was always how many races we had.
So I do have a question. So when did you start really getting into the distance running? Was there something that really motivated you to go that direction?
Yeah, so I actually had to take a few years off of running. I experienced a few injuries in college, as many collegiate runners do. It's a little bit hard to avoid when you're running at that volume and intensity all the time. My senior season of cross country, I ended, unfortunately, with a stress fracture in my tibia, which is, for those listening, if you don't know, that's your shin. And it was pretty bad. Like I had some like multiple spots in my shin. So I tried to come back for my final indoor season, and I was threatened with surgery because it was not recovering the way that we had hoped. So obviously did not run that season and just took the longest time I ever had taken off of running from when I started. Then graduated and I was like, I want to do the Akron half. Like I've been waiting to do this race. We always volunteered at it when I was in college on the cross country and track team. So did my first Akron half and had a little bit of shin pain come back. And it was also the first time that I was training without a team and, thinking I could run the same pace as I did in college after taking all that time off. And I was like, I need a break. This really isn't the way that it used to be. Like it's different now. And I actually found CrossFit with my now husband. At the time, obviously, we were just dating and he did it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try that out, like something different. And it was really great for my competitive spirit. I was still able to, compete with people, but in a completely new space that I did not really have a lot of experience with. And I didn't have metrics to compare to. Really found that I loved CrossFit. I got very into that, kind of took that very seriously for a few years, but I kept doing the Akron half like continuously every single year. So I kept coming back to that. So it kind of kept the fire alive for running a little bit, so shout out to Akron and for having a great marathon and half marathon, because I will always do that race for as long as I can. It's one of my favorite races. And then one of my girlfriends from CrossFit, she decided that she was going to do another marathon. And I think it was her 5th at the time that she was like, I want to try for my 5th marathon. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't know. Like, I kind of want to do one, but I was, nervous because obviously it was an unknown territory for me. And I had really taken that step back from running. And I remember after a day at the gym on a Saturday, I was like, all right, I'm going to go run 4 miles and I'm going to see how it feels. And if it feels good, I'm going to sign up for this marathon, which is like hilarious looking back. Like, why did a 4-mile run decide my fate of doing a marathon? I don't know, but it felt great. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And when I took that leap, I, remember having in the back of my head this goal of maybe I can qualify for Boston. But I also knew like it's my first one. If it doesn't happen, that's okay. Like I don't know how hard this is going to be. And I got very lucky. I did qualify for Boston on my first try of a marathon, which, like I said, I know how lucky I am. And from then, the rest is history because, once you qualify for Boston, you're like, well, now I got to do that. And that led to marathon number 2. And then didn't do what I had hoped my first Boston. So then I was like, well, I got to go back and get vengeance. And so it kind of just started the cycle. And I really started to fall in love with distance running again. And I think the coolest part was that, I didn't do that in college. So I didn't have something to compare to. It was a new space for me. And I learned so much about the sport that was, like I said, different and new to me from what I did in college. So that's really kind of what ignited my love for the half and the full distance.
What was your first marathon?
Columbus.
Okay.
Yep.
I haven't done Columbus yet, but I heard it's a good one.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a solid one. They have a really good crowd support. It kind of reminds me of Akron, but just a little bit bigger, great community turnout. And if you like to get into like what the race is for, like the philanthropy, they do like a really good job with the hospital and having the kids out there. So yeah, it's a really good race and it's not too hilly. So
yeah, there's no sand run.
Yeah, it's no sand run. I heard it's flatter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I got to ask a question. You're still, are you, I don't know if you guys are members, guys and girls, the Merriman Valley Track Club.
Yes.
Are you still a part of that?
Yes, I am.
Because it's a pretty elite group. You know, I see the vests around. I know
Yeah.
Amy, shout out Amy, down at Second Soul, buy all your shoes from Second Soul if you're in the Akron area. That's where I go. How do you get into this club? I've been wondering. It seems pretty elite. You know, everyone in there's super fast. Do you have to qualify for Boston?
So I'll be honest, I know that I'm like the slowest girl on the Merriman Valley Track Club. And I just asked. I was like, I want to be a part of this group and I want to get better. And now I'm like, have kind of gone into like a slower era of my life with getting pregnant and everything. But just a group of us that just like to run and race and challenge ourselves. And like I said, I will very much admit that I am not as elite as most of the girls and guys that are on the team, but I'm just happy to be a part of it. Nate Orndorff is his name. He is the, I'll say like head or captain, if you will, of the team. Yeah, he's the one that sets the standards, owns the website, all that stuff. So he's kind of the person to reach out to. And I'm sure, I mean, he runs the Instagram as well. So for anyone that would be interested in getting involved with the team, that's where I would say to go, is just go to the Instagram account and just kind of ask. Because I honestly don't know exactly what the standards are. I don't really know if we have any. The men might. I don't think the women do, because we're kind of still newer, smaller group of girls. But yeah, just happy to have like a group of girls that, you know, like I said, we want to push each other, get better, have the support of each other. So
They all are super fast. They're, you know, they've done very well at a lot of races. So I envious of their success for sure. And I root for them. I know a bunch of them ran Buckeye 50K. Yeah, it was cool to see the Merriman Valley Track Club out there running the Buckeye 50K last summer.
Does the Merriman Valley Track Club, do they run trails? Do they primarily do road races or road running? So what type of running do they do?
For the most part, primarily roads, but we've got some people who still like to do the shorter stuff, like the track. Like they like to go do mile, 5K short stuff. Then we have quite a big chunk of people who like to do the half and the full. And then, yeah, I mean, there's Eamon and then his girlfriend, Nikki, they're big trail people. So it kind of just ranges, like it's more or less like whatever you want to do. But I would say our niche is probably road racing.
Also, Eamon might be the nicest guy out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just so kind, heart of gold. He's the best.
Super cool dude.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of leads us into our next big topic. Really the reason, you know, I really wanted to have a coach on. Do you help coach anyone on that team?
I do not. No, I definitely am coach. I would say more of a beginner and or experienced, but looking to get faster. That's kind of the population right now that I am working with. I'm working with a few people that are trying to get their first BQ. So again, those individuals that are on Merriman Valley Track Club are definitely more in the elite category. And I personally haven't expanded into that yet with my coaching. Happy to do that. Love to do that. But that's not who has come to me at this time yet. So, yeah.
So that's what we're looking to evolve into, possibly down the road. So right now you're looking to more optimize someone like Kim and I that want to get a little bit faster, maybe hit a Boston qualifier, maybe just finish our next race. Also, my case usually something to that effect is what you're more focused on.
Yeah. I love helping. I mean, like I said, really anybody from a very beginning standpoint to somebody who's done this a few times, but is like, all right, I have been running the same time and I'm ready to, you know, PR bigger than maybe a minute. I want to take a bigger chunk of time off. What I found is the most fun is helping people realize like, oh, I have more potential than I thought I did. And that is super cool to me. So I would say kind of more experienced, but not elite, like I said. So taking somebody that has definitely done the sport, but like, oh, hey, you know what? Like by adding in hill repeats or by adding in some strength training or, you know, things like that like maybe you weren't thinking of before or weren't doing, and then working on your mindset and just working on how to approach your runs and your training just a little bit smarter. That is really where I feel like I thrive as a coach. And with my competitive background, being a collegiate athlete, I love people that show up and are ready to work hard and that I don't have to push as hard. Like I obviously have no problem being that accountability partner for individuals, but I love the person that, like I said, like I will move heaven and earth to get my runs in. And so those are the type of people like with that similar mindset of like, I'm here, I want to do this, I'm ready to tackle my goals.
Hey folks, if you're loving the stories, tips, and laughs we're dishing out, make sure you don't miss an episode. Hit that subscribe button so you're the first to know when a new episode drops. And hey, if you've got a second, why not leave us a review? Your feedback helps us improve and keeps this running community growing. Lace up, hit subscribe, and let's get back into the show. So when you're coaching, what's the first thing that you look at? Is it volume? Is it intensity? What is the very first thing that you see that, oh, I can fix? And I know, and I certainly understand that everyone's different, but is there like a general rule of I can fix this to maybe get the most out of someone right away? Is there a first step that you always look to?
That's a great question. So when I do my initial consult and go through my questionnaire with them and just kind of get a pulse for where the athlete is at and what their background looks like, I really try to first of all, meet them where they're at. I say that because I think that a lot of people think that, you have to be running 5-6 days a week to be successful. And that is just not the case. I didn't really go into this about myself, but I will use myself as an example here really quickly. In college, obviously was running more than I run now because it's college and that's just what we're there to do. But I would run 5-6 days a week. And then I got those injuries that I talked about. And now that I've, refound running, I run 3 days a week on average. I've run all of my marathons now on 3 days a week. And I cross train as well. But the reason I say that is I get a lot of people that approach me and have a similar style or like exercise routine kind of that I do, where they're like, hey, I like to do CrossFit, or I like to do Orange Theory, or whatever it is. I like to strength train. And I want to keep that as part of my plan. Can you accommodate that? And that is something that I really like to explain to people that I do, because I never want running to be cumbersome for my athletes. I don't want them to be like, oh, well, now I have to run 5 days a week and I'm like so bored because I'm running every day and I miss lifting or I miss cycling or whatever. So that's number one, is like, I really like I said, to fit in with what the athlete likes to do. So this remains fun, because we are adults. We are not doing this as a job. The title of this podcast is Hobby Jogger. We are just here to have a good time. And I want my athletes to do that. But number two, like you said, I look at volume first. Intensity always comes second. And oftentimes I have found that most people do too much. I will use Jen as an example because I don't think that she'll get upset if I say this. When she came to me, she was doing way too much. And I was like, Jen, when was your last rest day? And she was like 2.5 weeks ago. And I was like, girl, we're taking a rest day once a week, period. End of story. Not active rest. No, we are taking a full rest day. And that is something I find often, is that people think that they have to run or work out all the time. And if you never give your body time to rest and recover, then you're not going to give it a chance to get better and improve, because you're not recovered. Another kind of thing I say to people often is less is more. And that's like I said, why I run 3 days a week. Less is more for me. That's what I found works for me. Like you said, everyone is super different. Some people are not going to work on that. They're going to need more mileage. They're not going to respond to the same things. But yes, I definitely look at volume first. And then, like you said, there's also people on the other side of the coin that they're just not doing nearly enough. And we've got to bump that up. So that's where I start. And then when the athlete is ready, then we can safely start adding in some intensity. But most people also need to slow down in addition to do less volume. They usually are already going too fast, which also is not allowing them to recover. So those are kind of where the areas that I start.
Right. How do you feel about the phrase run slow to get fast?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been on both sides of this coin before. I in college used to run way too fast, and now have learned to love to run slow. So I will use my most recent marathon as an example. I did Boston in April, and because I was recovering from my pregnancy and I was still very newly postpartum, I did not care about what my time was. I just wanted to complete it, and I did not do any workouts. I was just trying to get to the start line. I ran majority of my runs in the, we'll just say 9:30 to 10-minute average range. And I was able to average a 9 flat on race day. So that shows like I ran slow to accomplish a faster result on race.
Right.
But no, truly it goes back to, again, that recovery piece. If you're always working too hard and your heart rate's too high, then you're not going to be able to allow yourself to get better. You build more endurance when you stay in that zone 2, easier heart rate zone pace area, so trying to use all the words for all the listeners, but yeah, no, it definitely is true. And it's so backwards and it's hard to trust it. I mean, I have it happen a lot where athletes want to run faster or they come to me and they're like, why are my paces so slow for my easy days? And it's like, I know it's hard. I've been in your shoes. I still struggle with it some days, but I always say, once I start giving you workouts, you'll be thankful for the easy days and you'll want to go slower.
I'm glad you brought up the zone 2, because I know that's kind of the hot button thing. I guess it's a thing that everyone seems to be talking about. I know from the ultra side of things, 2 years ago, Kilian Jornet released his training block that he did for UTMB, and 90% of it was in zone 1 and zone 2 for him. And it was kind of, I think, maybe woke up a lot of people to, what you were saying, the easier you run. Can you just go over real quick what you define that as a coach, zone 2? Do you strap a heart rate monitor on people and get kind of a readout first? Do you just kind of go off of what I go off of, which is just kind of what I feel like my effort is? I know what my effort is for this pace. I know it's pretty easy, so I go out and do most of my miles for that. How do you define it, Jillian?
I think that the heart rate zones, that whole talk that you're saying is very, I'll use the word trendy. That could be controversial to some people because heart rate has always been a thing. It's not new news, but it's new that we're really like deep diving on the zone 2. I have had athletes come to me and say that like, I do the zone 2 heart rate training, and so I will be running this pace. And we found that actually, like, she was running too slow because she was really trying to go off of this heart rate, right? And it's super important, obviously, to listen to your heart rate. But to your point, Casey, how accurate, number one, is your heart rate? What tool are you using to measure it? If you're using your wrist, you just can't trust that. You've got to use a chest strap. And then we've got to factor in, what's your resting heart rate? If you're a female, are you on your cycle? How's your sleep? There's so many things that go into heart rate. And then I've had athletes before, like I tell them, like, try to keep it within, like, I give them a big range because I understand that the, method that they're using to track it, which is typically a watch, is going to be off depending on the person. And then they get obsessive. And then they're constantly looking at, I'll be like, how often were you looking at your wrist, during your run? And then it's like, all right, now I don't want you to look at it at all because you're being, you're thinking too much. So I really try to, like you said, Casey, try to give them a few cues, but really listen to your body. We all know our body, like, your body best. If you're finishing that run more tired than you started, then you probably ran too fast. If you can't have a conversation, if you're with a friend, you probably ran too fast. If you're needing to stop and take walk breaks, you're running too fast. So there's some things we've got to just logically think about here. I have a heart rate strap and I don't always wear it either. Like, I wear it when I run on my treadmill because it's right there on the screen and I can see it. But if I'm out and about, I really try to not be obsessive of looking at the watch. So I really try to tell people, like, yeah, just listen to your body.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I do. I'm not going to go in and get like the title of the show says, and you said it, I'm a hobby jogger. I've just kind of figured out what my pace zones are to the best of my ability, which isn't probably very good, but, I'll go at a slow pace for, 8 miles or whatever, I listen to my podcast. If someone calls, I can answer the phone call and have a decent conversation with them. And, so that's the way I look at it. And I know, like you said, it is definitely a trendy topic. It's everywhere in running. So I at least wanted to touch on one trendy topic while we have you here, because people do ask us all the time about zones. Do you know your zones, Kim?
I mean, I just base it off my watch, which, that is probably not the most accurate tool to utilize. But any given day I'm running, I'm also, when I look at my heart rate, I also have to assess like how I am that day. Did I have a stressful day at work? Did I drink enough water? Did I drink too much coffee that day? Did I sleep great the night before? And I recognize that even sometimes when I feel like I'm doing like a slower pace and my heart rate's high, I probably am doing too much in my body. So I think being mindful of other factors that can affect your heart rate in a run is going to be so key if that's something you're going to utilize.
So we've covered the easy runs. We've covered the kind of the base building. Now we get to the part where you are going to optimize me, meaning through the training that we're doing to hopefully qualify for Boston. What are some of your go-to workouts, and what are some and hopefully we're not, giving away the keys to the castle here by any means, because there's a lot more that goes into coaching, I'm sure, than just, hey, do these workouts, because we'll touch on that in a minute, the paper trainers kind of thing. What are some go-to workouts, and what are some ways for the average hobby jogger who has 45 minutes, an hour every day to get the most out of those hard workouts?
That's a great question. Gosh, it's hard to answer because there's so many. And again, of course, it's dependent on the person. And it's also, let me say, it's dependent on the race too, of course, like what paces you're going to target here. But let's just use the marathon because you said Boston. So I think training obviously at the race pace that you want to go at is very important. But something that I learned in college from the coach that got me all of my PRs was it's a funny quote, and it sounds a little scary, but he would always say, I was trying to run, I can't believe I was this fast, like thinking about it now, but I was trying to run 5:20 pace for my 3K, which, like I said, wow, go past me that. But anyway, that was 80 seconds per 400. And so when we would train, he would always say, let's train at 78 per 400 so that you can die to 80s. And so anyway, I like to do a lot of threshold work, which is faster than your marathon pace. Because if you can feel comfortable in training at your threshold pace, then marathon pace will feel easier. So I like to throw in repeats of, let's say, like 800 to a mile. And then if you're a little bit more advanced, sometimes doing like a 2-mile tempo with a little bit of rest, maybe doing another 2-mile tempo. So again, depending on how experienced you are and how much you can handle, I like to do threshold work at varying interval distances. I think that, like I said, that just gets you ready to feel really comfortable at your marathon pace because it's faster than that.
So real quick, let's go over what threshold is, because even for me, I'll be honest, I don't know. I run trails. I just go up and down some hills. I get dirty. I fall. I hurt my knee, stuff like that. What is a threshold workout? What are we looking at with a threshold?
So in threshold workouts, you're trying to work at your lactate threshold. So you're trying to get your body used to running that faster pace and handling how to process that chemical that is created. So it's typically like 2 minutes faster than your easy pace. And like I said, faster than marathon pace, obviously. It's about 30 seconds faster than your marathon pace. So that's my best without looking up the definition.
No, that's the best way to define it, is to simply, I want to run, we'll say 1:30 half marathon. So that's 6:50 pace-ish.
Yeah.
So I want to be doing this work between 800 meters and a mile at 6:15, 6:20 pace, correct?
So not quite. Your threshold is very close actually to your half marathon pace.
Okay.
It's a little faster than your half marathon pace actually. So a lot of times with my athletes, I tell them that we're doing half marathon pace when it's really threshold pace. So it's also a great tool to use for if they're training for a half even, because it's a little quicker than what their targeted half pace will be. So that's another easy way to think of it is, yeah, whatever you're targeting your half marathon, that's around what your threshold is.
Do you do it based off of, hey, I want to run a half marathon in 2 hours, which is about little over 9-minute miles. Is that going to be, then your threshold pace would be like maybe 30 seconds less? Like how do you ultimately determine that in an athlete?
I use a really great tool. It's actually where I have my certification from. You kind of mentioned this in the intro. So you've probably heard of VO2 max before. Right. Most people have. So I have my certification through V.O2, which is by Dr. Jack Daniels, not the whiskey, the running expert. And he has created a bunch of calculations essentially that determine these paces for us. So it's great because I don't have to memorize them and neither do you. So if an athlete comes to me, like you said, Kim, and says, I want to run a 2-hour half marathon and that's my goal, I want to break that. What I typically do is to make sure that it's not completely out of the realm because, it could be like me saying, I want to go run a sub-3 right now well, that's just not feasible. Like it's way out of my reach at the moment. So first, I always use a race within hopefully the last 6 months. If they don't have a race within the last 6 months, then we'll do a time trial to kind of determine, okay, where are they at? Where should their paces be? What's relative right now? From there, then when I set up a profile for them in my coaching app through VDOT, then it spits out all the paces for me, which is beautiful. So it does all the math for me. And then it figures out like, okay, based on what their last race effort was, their PR, if that was in the last, like I said, 6 months, then it'll determine, okay, so that's their projected pace based off of that for a different distance. Here's their easy pace based off of that race. And then, so it's really nice because then if you PR again, it'll ask like, do you want to update your VDOT score? And then everything changes for you. So really, really nice. And I like that it's science backed. And like I said, that's why I like to keep it current and within the time frame we're in now, because again, using myself being postpartum, like my PRs pre-pregnancy, like if I went off of those times right now, I wouldn't be able to, like my training would be not appropriate. So I have to do what I'm capable of at this moment. So you can't just throw PRs in there and be like, that's my VDOT. No, we gotta figure out where we are in this moment. But yeah, it's a great tool.
I'm glad we're having you on to explain all this to me in simple terms, because I get lost in the minutia of when I start looking at all these things. We're sitting there at night watching whatever show Kim has recommended for us to watch. And I'm going through all these things, the threshold, do these VO2 max workouts, but then sometimes you want to sprinkle in the tempo. And Kim and I have even, talked about the different terms that there are.
Oh, yes. Yes.
For everything. And so it's starting to make a lot more sense. And we certainly appreciate you taking the time to explain this to us hobby joggers here, Jillian. So I know I'm getting something out of the conversation. How about you, Kim?
Oh, absolutely. Like when people say tempo runs, like I'm like, I don't even know what pace I should be doing and everything like that. Like I have no idea. I just go out and run depending on how I feel that day. And usually I like to slow it. I've been slowing it down more and it's been more enjoyable. So, but I have no idea what my threshold pace is or what anything that is. So I am learning a lot.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because there's so many terms, and a lot of times I either have an athlete that like does not care at all. They just like listen to what's in their plan. And then I have another athlete that wants to know all the definitions and what does it mean? And like, please explain all this. Right. And I mean, you've heard this, maybe you haven't, but like marathon pace should be comfortably uncomfortable. And that is also kind of how, to an extent, I would explain tempo pace, which is threshold, but it's a little bit faster than that. But really, it should feel like when you're fit and your tempo pace is appropriate, you should feel challenged, but also like you're crushing it. Like you should be like, I can hold this for, a decent amount of time versus like our faster reps that we're, not able to hold more than like a 400, let's say. So a tempo is something that you can hold challenging, but somewhat comfortable. Like I said, you feel like, I don't know. I always feel like powerful when I do a good tempo run because I'm like, I've got that. Like it's hard, but I can do it. I can hold it for like couple miles. So that's in layman's terms, how I would describe a tempo run.
That's definitely what I need is layman's terms. Yeah, I am the layman, as we have seen on this show. Yeah, it's a lot. And I imagine that's one thing when you get a new athlete, there's probably a lot of people that are intimidated to take the next step into running seriously. Because if you just look at it online, it is this labyrinth of terminology. Me, who runs every day, doesn't know. So I can't expect someone new to know. And it's got to be overwhelming for new athletes that you get. Does that happen a lot, Jillian?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, a lot of people, I think, just don't believe that they can do it. And, sometimes people are like, I know I need you in my corner to do this. And they're like, I don't think I can ever go past a half marathon. Like, I really one day want to do this. And, like I said, that's my favorite thing about coaching is showing them that they can. I mean, now I've done 5 marathons, but my first training cycle, I would get like literally anxious thinking about like going into my next run that was longer than the last. And like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. And now I know so much more. And that is why I want to be that person for people, because I didn't have a coach at that time. I was also following an internet plan and like not knowing what I was doing and not knowing how to fuel and all of that. And just going into it very haphazardly. And so, yeah, I mean, there's definitely people who, and still to this day, I mean, I get people all the time that are like, I'm going to work with you. I want to do this. And then, obviously everyone has their reasons. I'm not saying like you have to have a coach, and like, I get it. It's a financial burden for some, or you just like want to do your own thing, and that's totally cool. But a lot of people like say that. And then I think that they, are nervous to like take that next step. But I just want to say while I'm on here, like, that is the role. That is our purpose. Like, you are not judged. We are here to help you and to be your cheerleader and support and remind you that like, this is hard, but you're doing it and you can do it. Running is not an easy sport, especially on top of like the lives that we live. Like I said, we're so busy, and to find time, especially in an area like Northeast Ohio, like the weather's cool as in it's nice right now. I mean, it's not cool. It's hot, but once it hits winter and like it's dark all the time and it's freezing, like it's not easy to get out there, and we still do it. It's a hard sport.
Yeah. And I certainly see the value in a coach like you, Jillian, if you were well said saying that if you're trying to get to the next level, the next goal, like absolutely, because there's so much science, so much data behind everything in running now. It's really come a long way in the last, I think, 10 to 15 years, it seems. I wasn't at all serious about running 10 or 15 years ago, so I don't know. I just kind of went out and plodded through the woods and, a couple times a week. So it does seem like that. And there's a lot of information to digest for people. So hats off to you for that. I
just want to ask about, I think runxiety, I call it runxiety, is a real thing. And sometimes, I've experienced it before when I am running and I'm not hitting what my pace expectations are in that run. And then you start feeling anxious. And, do you experience that a lot with your athletes that you coach? And then how do you help them mitigate through all that stuff?
Yeah. So if somebody is ever having the anxiety of like, the paces feel too hard, I can't do it, that's when I just am going to like take the workouts away. Now that sounds like extreme, but let's take it to a place where this is enjoyable. If the workouts are giving you anxiety, not worth it. Also, let's go back to your goals. If you don't have a time goal, then maybe we don't even need to do workouts. Maybe we do some strides to keep it interesting and to change up the run. So it's not just like, oh, I'm just running another 3 miles every Tuesday, or we throw some hills in just to, like I said, to keep it interesting, change it up. But if the goals are just to finish and we don't need to work on the pace work like that, then we don't. Another thing that I will do sometimes, depending on where the athlete is I did this a lot with my postpartum running, is run walk intervals. People shame walking like so much, and it's like not that bad. Like it's not bad for you at all. It's actually like totally fine. If that's what you need to do to keep it enjoyable and you're going to get further with volume, then do it. I mean, I did it at Boston. Like I will raise my hand and say I walked like 2 or 3 times during that race. Did I want to walk? No. But an old me would have been like, oh gosh, like the race is over. I walked. And I remembered that I did run walk intervals when I was coming back. And I was like, all right, you're walking for a minute and then you'll start up. You'll run as long as you can. We'll walk again if we need. And it like totally just changed my mindset. So I think sometimes practicing that in our training, like if you've got to walk today and just turn it into a run walk interval run and it reduces the anxiety, then fine. It's not that serious. Like I have to remind people that it's like, you're doing this for fun. So that's kind of typically how I approach it.
And I had two more things that I wanted to bring up with you. Fueling during a race. Do you coach your athletes on that? Do you coach them? And I've started to do this. Kim will tell you I don't eat a lot or drink a lot on long runs. Her and her boyfriend Grant often run those with me, so she knows. But I've started now to fuel more during those. It was in part thanks to Amy, the dietitian from the show, explaining how recovery is a lot quicker after you do that. Is that something that you teach to your athletes? Do you go over fueling plans for a marathon? Because it's a very important, you're out there for 3.5, 4 hours. So it's a very important part of the marathon. Is that something you go over?
Yes, with a little help from one of my other coaches on my team. So I have a registered dietitian on my team. Her name's Andrea. She is the one that is obviously the expert on that. So nutrition is obviously a fine line because I am not a dietitian or a nutrition coach. So I have to be very careful with what I say because I can't prescribe or tell people because that is just not what I'm certified in. So the approach I always take with athletes, again, because not everyone has the financial freedom to just go work with Andrea or any other dietitian. So I always just use myself as an example. And I say, this is what works for me. This is what I do. Take that as you will. If you want more help, go work with Andrea. But it is definitely something to talk about. And I usually just start the conversation with like, what did you do during your run with fueling? What did you do the night before? What did you do beforehand? And I just have them tell me. That way, like I said, I'm not prescribing, I'm not telling them anything what to do, but they're telling me. And that just gets the conversation going. And then I ask them, like, do you think you could maybe have more? Or does that bother your stomach? And so we kind of just talk about those questions so that we're keeping it very surface level. And I'm not, like I said, crossing any boundaries that I'm not allowed to coach on. Me and Andrea are very passionate about that if you do need that nutrition help, that you go to the registered dietitian. They've done the schooling, they know the stuff. So, but yes, a short answer, we do talk about it.
Yeah, that's one thing that's been important to me is to, like, I guess, train my stomach as much as train myself, where I can put some calories, carbs into my stomach over the course of, 6, 7 hours.
Yeah. And that's something I can say on that topic is like the phrase, like, don't wear anything new on race day. Like, don't wear new shoes, don't wear new socks, shorts, etc. It's the same thing with fueling. Like, you should be practicing it early. Like, don't wait even till your 20 miler or your longest long run. Like, do it at the beginning, start practicing then. And also, most of us probably need to eat and drink more than we are. I know I look back at what I did my first marathon training cycle and I was like, how did I survive? Like, how did I get through that race with the time I had? Well, probably because I was 5 years younger. But like you said, Casey, like, even eating after immediately, like, you recover better. Like, it is something that if you are out there and you're like, I feel like I know what to do for training, but I'm still, and I don't want to work with a coach, but I feel like I can still unlock a little bit more. Like, maybe it's your nutrition, and maybe that's like the next thing for you that you really need to focus on. It is a very big piece of long distance running that you have to think about at some point or another.
So I was wondering, do you want to talk about strength training, Casey? I know we wanted to get into that.
I mean, I'm good on time if Jillian is.
I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned that you incorporate, like, if somebody is doing CrossFit or Orange Theory, and make sure that is a big part of their training plan. I've been doing some more strength training and I've noticed a difference. You can touch on some of the benefits of strength training for runners.
Absolutely. So just to start really simple, like, when we run, we are on a single leg and we are putting all of our body weight onto one leg while we run. And that puts us at obviously a higher risk for injury. And then you think about the trails and you add in all that uneven terrain and hills and et cetera. So if we don't have muscles to support our bones when we're doing all of that, then we are going to potentially get injured faster. So single leg exercises, are very, very important. Glute work, very, very important because your glutes are supporting you as you are on that single leg. It's one of the bigger muscles of your body. I always have glute issues. Those are just like, they always get mad at me. So I've got to do my exercises. Yeah, strength training plays such a big role. And I know for myself personally, I feel like that is why I got injured as much as I did in college, or like constantly had things pop up, because we were strength training a little bit, but it just wasn't the priority. Now I strength train 3 times a week and I'm doing a full body workout every time. And I think another thing, like with runners, and this is dependent on the person, it's hard. Some people want to just do body weight stuff, and some people are wanting to do heavier weight stuff. And I think there's no limit. I think it just depends on the person. I don't think like, oh, you shouldn't lift over X amount of pounds. I think it depends. Like if you're on peak week for your race and you're trying to PR, then like obviously pull the weight back. But if you're just in like base building mode, like you can up the weights a little bit. But yes, it has tremendous benefits. And then I didn't talk about core, but our core is obviously also involved in every single step that we take. And if you don't have a good core, then you're going to have hip issues, you're going to have back issues. Like there's just, everything's connected, right? So making sure that we're really targeting our obliques, our back, our, main abdominal muscles. So, and then one other area that I always notice if I take a break from running and come back is like my upper back, like that carriage basically, like around your ribs. Like, I mean, you're holding you're pumping your arms and that's like holding you upright. So, making sure we're getting in our push-ups and like things like that. Shoulder work, like it's all important. So yeah, definitely. I am a very big supporter of strength training, and I put that on honestly almost all of my athletes' plans. Like I don't tell them what to do, and sometimes, like I said, they don't go to a CrossFit or a Orange Theory or something like that, but I'll say like strength training and I'll put it on there. And if they ask, then I will obviously make my suggestions, but it is just so important.
Yeah, you mentioning CrossFit. I think there was a pretty good case study after the NCAAs this year cross country. Parker Balby won nationals, doing very little volume. I don't think she's ever. I don't follow it that much. Any real whether it's professional running or college. So I don't know if she's ever said what she actually does for her training that isn't running, but I think that's a pretty good case study in how you can do very well with, clearly she's strength training. I mean, she's doing a lot of something, and CrossFit, I would imagine, probably crosses over pretty well with the 6K, 8K range, right?
Yeah. So I think with Parker, I think the thing that and I don't know specifically, but I think from interviews, what I've heard, I'm guessing that she's doing a lot of cycling, ellipticaling, and swimming, and getting in that zone too, and just getting volume on her legs without the impact. I'm sure she's obviously doing some strength training as well, but I think that is the bulk. And then when she's actually running on her feet, I believe she's doing workouts. So that's where she's getting her intensity on the days that she's running. And then she's just getting that volume base building from the cross training. And so then to your CrossFit question, from my own experience with CrossFit and running, I have since actually stepped away from CrossFit. I love it, but it actually started to get a little bit in the way with my running. As I've said, I have touchy shins. I've had a history of, shin injuries, and CrossFit involves a lot of like jumping is just the easy term. Like there's box jumps, there's jump rope, there's burpees, all those things you're kind of hopping. So now I've shifted more towards strength training that is very much just strength training. It's not the Metcons. And for those that don't know what a Metcon is like your high intensity interval training. So it's when you're jacking up your heart rate and you're doing like fast reps. And now my strength training is slower, focus on good form, and really just focus on the lift. It's not there to get my heart rate up. It's just there to strengthen my body. So I think that CrossFit can be absolutely beneficial. But again, as you're increasing your intensity with your training, then you need to back off the intensity with CrossFit. So that's just where you've got to have that smart balance, because you're gonna deplete your energy stores if you're going and having high intensity every single day, even if it's not through running. If it's through CrossFit and your heart rate's getting to like 180, then it's too high every single day, you know? So that's just something that if you are wanting to do both, you just have to be careful of.
Now we got another term I'm going to have to go look up. Metcon, Kim.
Metcon.
Yeah. I'm going to spend all night Googling Metcon now and why I should be doing it and how it will help me.
Nice. I will say low impact strength training has been my jam lately. It's a nice balance with the running.
Yes, I love that.
You did a lot of strength training before the Blood Root Ultra?
I did. And I'm continuing to do it. And it's a nice balance.
I walk a lot.
No, walking is great. And that is actually something I will put sometimes on athlete plans if they don't have like a bike, for example, that they have access to, or they don't go to a gym. Obviously, you're not always going to get your heart rate up to like the zone 2 with walking, but it's still time on feet. And so for marathons, 50Ks, ultra marathons, whatever, we know that time on feet is just something that we have to train our body to do. So yeah, I think walking is great.
Yeah, that's that is something that a previous guest had mentioned. Yeah, we're evolving as runners and learning more and more, and it's super awesome to hear it from someone who actually knows what they're talking about. So we definitely thank you, Jillian. I certainly appreciate your time. Kim, you as well.
Yes, absolutely. And before we leave, Jillian, where can our followers find you, like on Instagram? I know that you have, your coaching company. So where can we find you?
My business is Rise and Reign, training and nutrition. So that Instagram is just at Rise Reign Training. And then my personal coaching page is at Jillian_Rise Reign.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, it was great talking to you. Really enjoyed our conversation. I did learn a lot. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking with you guys as well. And like you said, always great to connect and meet other Akronites. And I hope to see you guys out there on the road or trails soon.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Hobby Jogger. We hope you've enjoyed our conversation today. And if you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support keeps us moving forward. Until next time, keep those feet moving and enjoy the miles.